Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's launch of our embedded network licensing and exemption guidance. My name is Simon Corden, and I'm one of the commissioners at the Essential Services Commission. To start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands we're meeting on today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I would like to acknowledge the connection that Indigenous Australians hold to country and culture, particularly in this time of great uncertainty. So now I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. In a moment, I'm going to take you through our plan for today, but first some quick housekeeping. First note, we're recording today's webinar and we'll make that video available for you to watch after the event and to share with your networks for those people who are unable to make today's session. During our session, if you want to ask a question, please type it in there's a box at the bottom of the Zoom screen, a chat, where you can ask any questions if you like. As we get to the Q&A part. We've got, to kick us off, we've got two 10-minute presentations to go through, and then we'll have about 25 minutes to have a Q&A session with questions. So while you're listening to the questions, while you're listening to the presentations, if any questions come up, I'd encourage you to pop any questions you have into the Zoom chat, or subsequently you can raise your hand and ask the question. We'll try to get us through as many questions as we can today, but if we don't get to yours, we will follow up via email and a post-event article on the website to make sure that all the questions have been answered. We've got about 100 people registered for today's launch, which is fantastic, including embedded network operators and industry peak bodies, which is an exceptional turnout. And I think this reflects the importance of embedded networks, serving as they do many people across various sectors of our community and our economy. And can I extend a warm welcome and thank you for taking the time to attend today's event. I'd also like to introduce you to some of the key people who are here today. A very warm welcome to the Energy and Water Ombudsman, Cynthia Gerbert, who's joining us from Energy and Water Ombudsman Victoria. I'd like to thank a big sincere thank you to Cynthia and her team for all the help that they've provided. It was ewovs who highlighted to us that there was a gap in the level of guidance, support and information available for embedded network operators, and that gap could result in a lack of understanding of the obligations embedded networks have to support their customers under the state's energy rules. So ewovs has been a key contributor to the development of this material, and we thank you for all their input and support. I'd also like to introduce you to some of the key commission people here today, and can you, as I speak to mention each of your names, can you turn on your cameras and give us a wave? So firstly, Sarah McDowell, the Director of Energy.
Hello.
Secondly, Senior Regulatory Manager Con Sagonis.
Hello.
The Manager of Market Operations, Doug Young.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Our Licensing and Exemptions Lead, Kimberly Longmore.
Hi, everyone. Senior
Engagement and Education Officer, Anne Randalls. Thanks, Anne. From our pricing team, Director Marcus Crudden, Senior Regulatory Manager Dean Wickenton, and Head of Strategic Comms, Michelle Byrne.
Hi.
So, why are we here today? Most people, I would suggest, would agree that anyone selling or supplying an essential service like electricity has responsibilities to the people they're selling to. Now, those responsibilities are usually detailed in licenses, and anyone who's supplying or selling or generating or transmitting electricity in Victoria must hold an electricity licence granted by the regulator, that's us, the Essential Services Commission, unless they're exempt. In 2018, the rules governing entities who supply and sell electricity who are exempt from the licence requirements were updated. These changes were made to ensure that customers of exempt sellers, those living and operating businesses embedded networks, have protections like others in the community. Now, Sarah's going to go into more detail about our role in administering and supporting compliance with these rules in a few moments. But today we're here to launch our guidance document designed specifically for embedded network operators to help them meet their obligations in managing their networks. We also were wanting to develop a better understanding of your needs, the needs of embedded network operators, and what we can do to support you to comply. We are acutely aware that the events of this year have exacerbated existing forms of vulnerability with consumers, and many of those consumers were already on their margins, struggling to pay their bills and connect to the help that's available to them. So this has highlighted or created issues for those vulnerable consumers, but for also yourselves as business owners and operators, particularly, for example, regional tourist accommodation operators. So we're very pleased that so many of you are here today so that we can assist you with guidance as to what's required under the new rules. So, agenda and purpose of today. So today we're commencing what we hope will be a new phase in our relationship with embedded network operators. Our goal is to engage purposely with you to ensure that we understand your needs and that you clearly understand your obligations to your customers under the rules that guide electricity activities, that is the General Exemption Order. While today is the first step in building that relationship, we've been working on the foundation for this work for quite a while. We've updated our guidance and our website contact and worked with our colleagues at ewovs to better understand the environment. But now is the time to establish a closer relationship with you network operators so that we can respond to your needs as well as help you understand our role in ensuring compliance with the rules and protecting customers. So for today, we'd like to briefly take you through our role as a regulator, and then Cynthia is here to speak about the role of the Energy and Water Ombudsman. And then we'd like to open it up to you to explore how we can work better together in the future. So now I'm going to hand over to Sarah, our Energy Director, to talk to you about our role. Sarah?
Thank you, Simon, and good afternoon, everyone. So to begin, for the benefit of those who may not know much about the Commission, I would like to take a few minutes to explain our role, first in broad terms, and then specifically as it relates to embedded network operators. So the Essential Services Commission is Victoria's independent economic regulator of many different sectors, including Victoria's water and sector, as well as aspects of the transport sector, local government, and of course, energy. The Commission's role is to promote the long-term interests of consumers with respect to the price, quality, and reliability of essential services here in Victoria. Our roles are defined in a few key pieces of legislation, including the Essential Services Commission Act, as well as a number of industry acts, including the Electricity Industry Act. Our energy team here at the Commission is responsible for licensing businesses involved in generating, transmitting, distributing and selling electricity and gas here in Victoria. Now, we also establish and maintain the codes and guidelines that defines the rules these businesses need to follow. And we promote and enforce compliance with these regulatory instruments. Another key responsibility for the Commission relates to inquiries. We often undertake inquiries not only in relation to the energy sector, but in other sectors, so we can have a clear understanding about what is happening for the purposes of either changing our own regulations or providing advice to government. We also routinely report on the performance of the energy market, on prices, on changes to the makeup of the industry, including new licenses, and we also report on the performance of energy companies against the energy rules. Our pricing team within the Commission has a pricing role in the energy sector, but that is a limited pricing role. They are responsible for setting the minimum feed-in tariff, which is the minimum energy companies are required to pay customers for supplying energy back into the grid. more relevant to yourselves is the Victorian default offer. So the Commission is responsible for setting a price for a regulated price offering that all energy retailers must offer to their designated customers. But of course, as many of you would be aware sitting around the room today, as a result of government policy, the Victorian default offer also applies as the maximum price for embedded network customers. Now, many of you may have been at the forum last week, so we are currently consulting on the future Victorian default offer. And I really encourage you all to really get involved in that process, whether it's through written submission or it's through being involved in our public forums. It is only through listening from you, through hearing your reflections, can we truly understand, I suppose, what the video means for your operation. So I really encourage you to get involved in that process. If you've got views or comments you would like to make regarding how the Victorian default offer applies to embedded networks. Apart from the video, we have several roles when it comes to embedded networks. And these roles came out of essentially a government inquiry into embedded networks. It went over for a number of years, actually, from about 2015 to 2017. Now, as a result of that inquiry, the government made a number of recommendations or decisions which related to the responsibilities of the Commission and introduced new responsibilities in relation to embedded networks. So as a result of those changes in 2017, we are now required to register exempt persons like yourselves. We specify obligations which apply to exempt sellers, in addition to those already prescribed by government regulations. We have responsibilities for ensuring compliance with the rules that apply to exempt sellers, and we also have the responsibility of appointing a dispute resolution scheme. And I'll speak about that in a moment. So in terms of registering exempt persons, the majority of exempt persons who are selling or supplying electricity through an embedded network needs to be registered with us. That's essentially your first obligation. If you're running an embedded network, or if your apartment building or shopping centre has 10 or more residents or tenants, you need to be registered. Or caravan parks, holiday parks, residential land lease parks, manufactured home estates, retirement villages with an embedded network also must register with us. And I won't speak for government policy, but a reason at the time this registration process was introduced was to promote some clarity and transparency regarding the sale of energy in embedded networks. The aim of our register is twofold: keeping your registration up to date to ensure that the information relating to your exemption is continued to be relevant. It is also a public register as well, so customers can look up to see who to contact if they need to. As I mentioned just before, we do have obligations or responsibilities in relation to identifying which obligations in our energy rules should apply to exempt persons. Now, prior to the government's changes in 2017, exempt persons still, had to comply with obligations, broad obligations in relation to supporting customers, and essentially the objective at that time was to ensure there was essentially comparable protections between customers who receive electricity traditionally, as well as those customers who receive energy through embedded networks. What the changes in 2017-18 did was to narrow the focus of those responsibilities. So essentially the obligations that we're discussing today, these are certainly not new, and they've been around for many years, but through the reforms in 17-18 we were able to target and clarify exactly what is required of exempt persons. But what we're launching today, which is takes that one step further, is to provide further clarity to you all about what it means to achieve compliance with those obligations. Another key role in relation to exempt persons embedded networks is very similar to our role in relation to energy retailers, energy distributors, and that is to ensure compliance. The guide is a key part of that, which we're going to discuss a bit later. But certainly, a key area of focus for us over the next 12 months is one, ensuring that you have the information available to yourselves to achieve compliance, but also that we do follow up with yourselves when we get reports of potential non-compliance. And to date, a key focus of that has been not being a member of the dispute resolution provider. And then finally, the last responsibility I would note that we have in relation to embedded networks is the appointment of a dispute resolution provider. And that dispute resolution scheme is the Energy and Water Ombudsman of Victoria. And we made that decision in March 2018 to appoint ewov as a responsible dispute resolution provider. We are very lucky, of course, today that we have Cynthia, the Energy and Water Ombudsman, to come and discuss with you all today their role in relation to embedded networks. And I'm sure many of you have already engaged in a really meaningful way with ewov to help resolve customer disputes. On that note, I would like to thank you all for listening. Thank you for engaging with us today. I think all of us have been on a real positive journey when it comes to this new framework, but this is not the end. This is really just kickstarting the conversation for us to continue to discuss about what your needs are when it comes to clarity in relation to compliance, and what we can both do to ensure customers who are being supplied energy get the protections they are entitled to. So on that basis, or on that note, I should say, I'd like to hand it over to Cynthia, who will give an overview of what ewov does, their role, and why it is important for operators to become members of ewov.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the Commission for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. Before I go any further, though, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands across Victoria on which we are situated today and recognise their ongoing connection to land, waterways and culture. And I'd like to acknowledge their traditional, any elders that are present with us today, and really recognise, particularly at the moment, the ongoing challenges that the Indigenous community are experiencing in COVID. As Sarah mentioned, we are the dispute resolution scheme for exempt persons, and we have been since 2018. But before that, we have actually been around since 1996, and we do provide dispute resolution services for the electricity, gas and water industries. We have 537 members, the vast majority of which are actually embedded networks. It's not all the energy and water companies that you would think it is, it's actually the embedded networks that have joined us in more recent times. We are a dispute resolution service. We aren't part of government. We're not the regulator. The regulator has been talking to you already. We are an organisation that works to resolve complaints between consumers and, in this case, their suppliers of electricity in an embedded network. We don't act for the consumer, and we don't act on behalf of any of the entities that are members of EWOV. So we are actually a company limited by guarantee. We have, even at a governance level, we've got this balancing act going on where we have 4 directors that are appointed by electricity, gas and water industries, and then we have 4 directors that are actually appointed by the Essential Services Commission as representatives of consumer interests. So we're similar to, say, the Telecommunications Industry Ombudsman or the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, where you may have lodged financial services complaints or telecommunication complaints on behalf of yourself or your businesses. There are actually energy and water ombudsmen throughout Australia. So my structure is replicated in New South Wales, South Australia, and Western Australia, but we do actually have energy and water ombudsmen throughout Australia. When people think about what our role is, it's really easy to focus on it quite narrowly. And there's never the intention that our role is thought of narrowly. While we're not the regulator and we're not government and we don't report to the minister, we have a role in both resolving individual complaints independently and efficiently, but also looking to see what we can do to reduce the occurrence of complaints. So I think, Sarah and Simon were alluding to before, the fact that we were starting to see issues bubbling up in embedded networks where we could see gaps. We couldn't help these consumers with the complaints because the entities weren't members of our scheme, but we were starting to see gaps in consumers experiencing detriment. So we started sharing some of our data, some of the customer stories and some of the experiences that we've seen. So we do that for embedded networks, we do it for water businesses, electricity retail and electricity distribution, as well as the gas industry. And you'll see that through our annual reports, you'll see it through public submissions we're making, other reports that we do. At the moment, we're putting weekly briefings into the Minister on what we're seeing is the impact of COVID on complaints. So we're using the information and data that we capture from that 25,000 cases we resolve each year to try and bring more clarity to what's actually going on for the lived consumer experience of, in this case, electricity received through the embedded network market. When I talk about the types of complaints we deal with, you could start from the assumption that we will deal with most complaints about embedded network supply and sale of electricity. So the vast majority of complaints that come to EWOV consistently across all industries relate to billing. There's a billing error, I haven't received a bill, I think my bill's too high, I've just received a catch-up bill. They are the primary issues that consumers across electricity, gas, water and embedded networks contact us about. We also receive the next, I suppose, category of complaints are people that are struggling to stay on top of their bills. And again, it's consistent across electricity, gas and water industries. The customers will contact us when they're struggling to negotiate a payment plan. They may be threatened with disconnection of their supply or a restriction of the supply in the water industry. And they want help to get their relationship back on track with their provider so that they don't lose access to what is an essential service in the market. We do see complaints around provision related issues, supply related issues, particularly at the moment when everyone in Victoria is, well, particularly Melbourne, is relatively constrained, we'll say. There's a lot more people who are impacted by having their supply cut off. We had planned outage at my property the other day on the day that I was running a complaints handling webinar for distribution businesses on how they can more effectively manage complaints. So, that's exactly the sorts of issues that we see bubbling up and coming through to us. There are also lots of things that we don't deal with. We don't deal with the setting of prices and tariffs. That is entirely the role, as Sarah was outlining before, for the regulator in terms of the Victorian default offer and the feed-in tariffs. We have nothing to do with the setting of prices and tariffs, but we will look at whether or not you've complied with the contract that you have with your customer. Have you put them on the tariff you told them you were going to put them on? Are they paying the price that they understood based on your interactions with them they were going to be paying? So we don't actually look at the dollar and whether consumers complain to us about, is it fair that I'm paying this much? But if customer was told they were going to be charged X and they're being charged Y, we will look at that. We don't look at the setting of government policies, any government directions. That's not the sort of stuff that we deal with. It's if you can imagine yourself as an everyday consumer and the things that are likely to irk you, they are the issues that we would be dealing with at the Energy and Water Ombudsman Victoria. When you think about how we operate, and I saw a number of names there. I've spoken to a lot of you before on how we work. We operate on a user pays basis. So everybody pays a small contribution to the annual fixed costs of EWOV, and that's based on your customer numbers. So for embedded networks, it starts at $100. Origin Energy, Yarra Valley Water start at $20,000. So it gives you a sense of parity based on your customer numbers. But 95% of our costs are recovered through complaints cost. You don't get a complaint, you don't contribute to those costs. I'm conscious of time, so I won't go through in a lot of detail the stages of our process, but one of the things I did really want to emphasise is that we look at complaints on what's fair and reasonable. So for us, we are required under our charter and under the documents that are, our approval process with the Commission to look at the laws and codes as only the minimum standard that you must meet when you're resolving a complaint. So the application of those energy rules that Sarah was talking about before, that is your bare minimum. You have to do that from our perspective in order to resolve a complaint. But there might be something unique or special about that customer's circumstance. I can see Doug on my screen and Simon. Simon and Doug aren't the same people. They're not in the same circumstances. They will experience a different impact based on what their energy company, their water company, or their embedded network provider does to them. Doug might be super robust and not be in the slightest bit concerned if the frontline call centre is rude to him. Simon might be a little bit more fragile, we'll call you Simon, and that has a different impact on Simon. We will take that into consideration. Simon might be a single dad at home with 6 children who's lost his job and has no other source of income. Again, the impact of a high bill on Simon will be vastly different to what it will be for Doug. So while you are required to offer a minimum under the laws and codes, we might say in Simon's circumstance, you need to do X, which is a higher standard than what we're going to ask you to do in Doug's circumstance. So I just wanted to frame that because that's a really important thing in trying to negotiate outcomes directly with your customers before they come to us, but equally through our process. We run the test of if you wouldn't do it to your mum, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, or neighbour, is it okay to do it to your customer? When we're starting to think about what fair and reasonable looks like. So I'll stop there, but that just gives you a bit of a context of how we fit in. We're not the regulator. We're working with you to try and get your customers' complaints resolved as quickly and as early as possible. Thanks, Simon.
Fantastic. Look, thank you, Cynthia, for your insights. I know I speak for my fellow commissioners when I say we're always keen to have the information that helps us understand the experience of both consumers of essential services as well as those of industry, including, and particularly today, the embedded network operators. This helps us to ensure that we can respond in a targeted and effective way as a modern and active regulator. And I know from my personal experience dealing with ombudsman schemes over the years when I've had complaints with financial sector or whatever, it plays such an important role in helping me as a customer know how to navigate what can be done, but also I think it's helpful for the businesses that are members of the schemes because you can be an important sort of intermediary in helping to resolve those complaints. So now we're at the interactive part of the discussion today where we're keen to answer your questions and have a bit of discussion about that. So if you can ask questions, probably the easiest way is in the Zoom chat. If you're logged on a computer, you'll see down the bottom of your screen, it says chat, and you can type in your question there. As I said earlier, if you're keen to be anonymous, just change your name and you can then put in an anonymous question or send a question to Kim, just directly to Kim Kimberly Long, who's down the bottom there. So yeah, so we're keen to get your questions now, so that we can work through some of the issues that you're facing in terms of understanding how what you need to do to comply with and to provide best service to your embedded network consumers. So, have we got any questions? Have a look on the chat here.
So Simon, maybe while people are thinking of some questions, I just probably thought I'll just speak very briefly about the guide that we're releasing today. The guide is, and I think some of you may have been sent the guide already. Kim, nod. Yep. So what this guide really seeks to do in plain English is really, set out for you what you need to do to comply with the rules. And in preparation for today, I was reflecting and reviewing actually some of the earlier decision documents that we put out. And strangely, in 2018, we said we didn't think it was a good idea to put out guidance. And I'm not too sure why. And I was there, so again, not too sure why. But I think what you will find is this document is really useful, and I found it, really useful in sort of reminding, myself, about the framework in detail, about, what's expected and what really, I think comes out, really in a really clear way. In particular in terms of helping customers experiencing payment difficulty. And I know many of your businesses are currently, experiencing, this is a problem in terms of customers, well, could be at least struggling to pay their bills or meet their bill expectations. So what the guide does is really sets out in a really clear way, what you need to do as the provider of an essential service to your customer, including what kind of assistance do you need to offer, and at what point do you need to offer that assistance. So that information is set out in the guide. We're also publishing today some templates to support your business meet your compliance obligations, and that also includes bill templates. So issuing bills, we appreciate, particularly for some of our smaller embedded networks, that can be a bit tricky, and so today we're also releasing those templates to support you achieve compliance. But of course, if there's more templates that you would like, that you would find of benefit, please reach out. We're here to help, and we'll certainly seek to provide you with the resources you need to support your work in delivering such an important essential service.
Thanks, Sarah. So the first question on the chat is for you, Cynthia. It's from Hamish McDonald, and he's interested to understand what role, if any, EWOV is having with the committee currently examining how to ban embedded networks in Victoria.
Hi, Hamish. Actually, I feel like I'm on talkback when I say, hi, Hamish, thank you for your question. Our role is similar to, I suppose, any interested party, in that we'll be providing our data and our information to the expert panel. By pure chance, my General Manager of Operations, who's been with EWOV for the last 15.5 years, is now going to be the manager of the expert panel. So that might look like we're exerting influence, but we are not. It's just a change of roles. But we'll share our experience both in what's worked well and what hasn't worked well in bringing embedded networks into our jurisdiction, as well as some of the case studies and examples that have come through from, I suppose, our experience before we were dealing directly with embedded networks, as well as since 1 July 2018.
Excellent. All right, the second question we've got is from Sean Liu about the power of choice. And Sarah, I'll probably throw this one to you if that's okay. Users are still facing a difficulty in switching electricity retailers. A lot of times we find it difficult in replacing the meters which do not have the NMI. Are there more improvements being considered to allow more choice for users? So you're on mute, so that's...
Yeah, sorry. Yes, no, thank you. And thank you for raising power of choice. I haven't heard power of choice referenced in a while. So the short answer is not at this stage, primarily because we haven't heard it directly at the Commission as an issue. But thank you for raising that, because certainly as a regulator that's seeks to promote competition and competitive outcomes, we do want to be aware of barriers, particularly barriers that prevent customers from choosing a supplier of their choice. So thank you for raising. I'll take that as an action item to explore further, what potentially can be done. But certainly we haven't, heard it as an issue, or certainly in a regular way. I just certainly haven't heard in the past 6 months. But thank you, and certainly, that's a key objective of ours, is to promote competition. So we'll certainly look into that.
Thank you, Sarah. I've got a question from Bruce Kilpatrick. And he's noted they're a small community-based holiday park and they're members of ewov, etc., which is fantastic. Pleased to see that you've joined up. And would like our thoughts on installing a solar system into their network to help reduce the largest cost of business. Obviously, we don't provide financial advice to, unfortunately, but I don't know if it's Sarah or Dean is the best person to give some thoughts about that, about how the feed-in tariff, etc., would work and the potential benefits.
So who's it, Bruce? Well, Bruce, thank you for your question. I wondered whether you could provide a bit more detail, I suppose, sort of the scope, of your question in relation to installing a solar system. Is it in relation to the feed-in tariff, or are there particular regulatory concerns or barriers that you're coming across that you would like to seek advice or you would like to see addressed?
So I suppose one of the general points that we've found in terms of our relationship with people using solar is the biggest bang for your buck is if you actually use the solar power you generate on site, generating it with a hope that you'll get the benefit from exporting it to the grid. You get sort of 10 cents a kilowatt hour from exporting to the grid, whereas you're actually paying 30 cents or 28 or something to buy it from the grid. So you'd want to be installing a system that you would use that power on site for your hot water services or whatever else. And I think, Dean, you might be able to address if you're still there, the benefits of how you time the use of your electricity to make the best benefit of a solar system.
Yeah, I think I just see in the feed here that they've been told they're not allowed to install a system. So it's probably just finding out.
Is that the distribution business, Bruce, that's told you, like your poles and wire business, that's told you you're not allowed to install?
It was just information we've received. We're trying to run a little around party, and we're told that because of our embedded network, we weren't allowed to have a solar system feeding the sites or anything like that.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you go, Sarah.
Like there are particular exemptions in terms of solar arrangements. Look, we're happy to take this issue offline, Bruce, just because we'll probably need to look at some of the further details, what might be leading to that outcome. But unless Cynthia's got any sort of further reflections, I'd like to learn more, that we can sort of have a bit of a closer look for you, just to make sure that distributors are being compliant with their requirements.
Was basically we can't become an energy retailer if we're providing solar into our own network. We've become an energy provider, and we're not licensed to do that via solar.
Bruce, I think if you can shoot an email through to the link, our email address, we'll get someone to follow up with you and better understand the specific challenges. Because obviously we're keen to make sure that barriers to people using renewable energy are removed as far as possible. So we'd be keen to follow up with you.
That'd be great.
I had a question from Sandra about if her business is sold, how do we transfer the license to a new business owner? I think that's more about how they transfer the registration on the embedded network registrar. Con, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, I think I can. So the best way would be to send an email through to our energy inquiries inbox, and then that would probably end up with Kim, and friendly Kim will be able to help you with that.
Okay, so it's a pretty straightforward process, and I don't believe there are any charges associated with that.
No, there are no charges associated with that.
There we are, something for nothing. A question from Heidi. I run a caravan park and would like to know where I can find the form to register as an embedded network provider. I do not have any permanent residence and do not charge for electricity except within the price of staying in the park for a tourist. Con, are you the best person again to respond to that?
I think, Kim, could you maybe respond to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So our online, we have a registration process that is purely online. So there's no form as such that you need to fill out manually and send in to us. What I might do is pop the link directly into the chat for you to access, but you can follow the prompts throughout that link. It will essentially require you to create a bit of a user account, and that user account will let you manage your exemption. So you'll be able to lodge it with us at the Commission and manage it moving forward. But I'll pop the link into the chat there so you can go directly to it.
And I see Melissa McDonald's also noted that another caravan park which is being told there's a challenge with installing a solar system. So that seems that that's more than one issue, more than one caravan park is dealing with this. So we'll definitely follow that up, Sarah.
And if you can send some information to in terms of the size of the system as well, because that's also relevant in terms of the framework, because there are certain megawatt thresholds, and once you exceed a certain threshold, then you are required to hold a license and be registered with the Australian Energy Market Operator. So that information would also be useful in terms of our consideration of this issue.
Okay, so we've got a different question from Sean Liu about upfront payments to developers in exchange for embedded network billing rights, believing this has been made illegal. However, the practice is ongoing. Where would you lodge a complaint in relation to that, and whether action can be taken against a rogue operator? A lot of new developments are being provided with embedded network where the owners do not have rights over their equipment or even the setting of tariffs. Is there anyone who's able to answer that question? It sounds like it might be a complicated one that we might have to take on notice. I don't know, Sarah.
Yeah, that could be a compliance issue potentially. So once again, if you could send that through to our energy inquiries inbox, our compliance team could have a look at that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've got another issue about solar. We might move on. So we've had one from Kylie Thomas. I work for an embedded network. I'm wondering if we have protection or concerns with the OC of a site. Can we contact ewov to see if they can help us?
It depends. Hi, Kylie. It depends on what the nature of the issue is. So, and it depends on your relationship with the owners corporation. If the owners corporation is a member of ewov because they hold either the selling or supplying exemption, you may be able to bring a complaint to us. But if the complaint that you want to raise is in your capacity, for example, as a billing agent rather than as a consumer, then we wouldn't be able to help you with that. It's a business to business relationship issue.
Okay. And we've got another question from Rebecca. Does the ESC set regulated pricing for gas in caravan parks? I think I can answer that one, and the answer is no. At this stage, the pricing controls are available are in the electricity sector, the Victorian default offer, which applies to electricity. Now, are there any other questions that people would like to raise?
Simon, can I just take advantage of one moment?
Absolutely, go for it, Cynthia.
I just wanted to point out Javla, who works for Energy and Water Ombudsman. She's the member liaison officer. I should have introduced her earlier. So if anyone from an embedded network is querying anything to do with how to join ewov, how to pay ewov, anything like that, Javla is on the screen. She's waving now.
She's got an amazingly full bookshelf behind her.
I just wanted to make sure that there was a face to go along with the name that you'll see on correspondence from our office.
So I had another question about from someone about a solar system. So someone who had an existing solar system when the new rules were introduced, under the distribution guidelines, we had to stop the use of the system back to the park. Vic Parks has provided this advice from their legal counsel. Sounds like there are a few issues that we would need to work through in relation to solar systems at a number of parks. So Sarah, do you want to?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think, this is why, we have these forums about what kind of particular guidance, we can issue that is of use. The distribution rules weren't changed when we made changes to our regulatory framework in 2018. So if there are different ways that distributors are applying the rules, then we certainly want to hear more about that. But what we'll do from this forum is we'll provide some guidance to members here regarding solar, and what do the regulations really in a really clear plain English format provide for, and if you're experiencing behaviour that's not consistent with those requirements, we want you to report that to us, because it's only through that information that we can act against businesses as we're not complying.
So if potentially one of the distributors is misinterpreting the rules in a way that is hindering the way they should be run properly, well, we can engage with them as well, can't we? And try and
Absolutely.
get sorted. Right, so Javla's put in a link on her her email address for any membership inquiries about ewov, which is great. Is there anybody who wants to ask any question orally rather than through the chat? I know some people might have connected in a way that makes it hard to use the chat function. If you can put up your hand, let me know. We're happy to take some questions from the floor. Right. Any other further questions people want to follow up with? We're hoping this is the first edition of this guidance that we've produced. We've got some useful questions today, and presumably you'll have some questions might arise afterwards. And when you've read the guidance, we sort of think of that guidance as the 1.0. So we'll be using the questions that you raise and the answers that we provide to help us enhance that guidance and make it clearer and more useful to you over time. So really don't hesitate to send any questions you've got following this session through to the link, which we can stick on there's an email address on our website to follow through. So here we go. There it is, exemption register at esc.vic.gov.au. So yeah, so sometimes after once you've read the guidance material, you might think, well, I still don't quite fully understand something. So if you want to follow up with that and shoot us an email, we can ring you back if necessary to talk it through. But that would be really helpful. And the information is on our website. So you go to, if you want to find the guidance document, if you didn't capture it in the link earlier, you go to our website and it's esc.vic.gov.au and search for under electricity and gas licenses and then under exemptions. And that's where you'll find the material about embedded networks. So if we don't have any other questions today, we might finish up now. Look, I'd really like to thank you for participating in that discussion and the very useful questions that were provided. Your insights are extremely valuable to us, and we'll take away what we've heard today and consider what it means for how we do our work. Cynthia, I think, would like a world where there were no complaints. Wed would like a world where there's no non-compliances and where customers and businesses are able to work together productively. So it's really helpful to have these sort of discussions. As I said earlier, if you've got any questions following this presentation, don't hesitate to email the team and they can assist you. I'll wrap up today's session by reminding us where we began, with us wanting to better understand how we can support embedded network operators and to assist you with understanding your obligations and providing the tools that will help you to operate your networks. Thank you all again for being here today, and we were certainly extremely pleased by the response to the invitation and hope this is the beginning of a productive and purposeful relationship. So thanks for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.